Hello and welcome to the 8:30 Live at 9. Now, it is Friday, so I know that everybody's doing other things, which is fine. But, we're just going to cover the news, and then, honestly, I didn't get to do yoga today, so then I'm going to do yoga, and then I'm going to eat. So if we can wrap this up in like 20 minutes, I'll be happy, because then I won't eat too late. Although I will say, it looks like nightlife is somewhat coming back. For the first time since the pandemic started, I got stuck behind a slow walker today, and I couldn't go anywhere, and I couldn't get around them. And it's because the streets were densely packed over here in the East Village. Now, we'll see what happens. Usually as the sun goes down, things quiet because there are no lit places to go indoors. And it can get pretty depressing at around 2 or 3 when you're used to going out and seeing a cacophony of activity. But at least at around sundown, things were pretty bumping. But that said, let's just cover some of these big news items. And, we'll go from least significant to most, I suppose, because that's how we normally do. And that's, thanks, Simon. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, I appreciate that, Simon. I do. I put some effort into it, trying to keep people apprised of what's going on. And, of course, the big news today, Borg Cube coming out of the sun. So you might see this article going around. I don't know. I have friends who like Star Trek. But there was a giant black square on an image of the sun. And people were claiming that there were aliens up there sucking up the raw energy of our celestial body. Much more likely that it was a damaged pixel or something in front of the camera. But, it happens to be a square, which is very reminiscent of a Borg cube. But the size of it was, I think, 10 times the size of Earth. So if that were truly up there by the sun, there would be some gravitational effects. Unless, of course, the aliens could control gravity, in which case we'd be in big trouble. But anyway, that was a nice, fun thing. The other things happening in the world are a little less fun. Actually, here's a slightly fun thing, or at least some good news. The Republicans are now in the Senate considering a second stimulus bill, truly considering passing it next week. Now, we spoke about the last stimulus and what a nonsense. We spoke about the last stimulus and how it didn't really meet the needs of the moment. So let's talk about the upcoming stimulus. So first and foremost, I think what a lot of people care about is direct aid to residents of the United States. It looks like we're going to get a second round of $1,200 stimulus checks sent directly to individuals, which honestly is fantastic because people need help. Rent is coming due. 25% of New York City residents couldn't pay rent. This is something happening all over the country. Another $1,200 in people's pockets will absolutely save some people from homelessness and make people's lives a lot better. That being said, we still lag far behind other advanced economies, many of which are giving out and have been giving out regularly since the pandemic began, $1,500, $2,000 every month, providing some stability to their economy. But that being said, it looks like we may get $1,200. Another thing that's being debated is another top-up to unemployment insurance. So you might remember that a bone of contention in another stimulus package was an extension of the unemployment the pandemic unemployment compensation, the PUC, which added $600 of federal money on top of any state unemployment insurance that people were receiving for jobs that they had lost, and an extension of the timeline for unemployment insurance, making people eligible for longer. Well, that expired this month, and the Republicans have been loath to reinitialize it because they think that people make too much money on unemployment insurance. So we're definitely not getting another $600, but we may get an additional $200 every month on top of regular unemployment insurance. Then there's some aid to states, and of course, what's a stimulus package for Republicans without a tax cut? A payroll tax cut. Now, glaringly missing from this stimulus is still absolutely $0 for cleaning materials, cleaning employment, hygiene professionals, PPE, or the production of cleaning products or PPE themselves. So, or for the reconfiguration of public spaces like offices and restaurants and small businesses. So, even though it's absolutely stunning to me, but the United States seems completely disinterested in doing anything to actually mitigate the spread or effect of coronavirus. It begrudgingly hands people money to ensure that they sort of don't die, and then says, ignore the pandemic. Everything is back to normal. Just go on with your regular lives. Now, we could have and should have spent a lot of our first $2 trillion stimulus package reconfiguring the economy for resiliency, and we could use a lot of stimulus money right now for reconfiguring things like education and large sectors of the economy that, if done properly, could provide some return to normality. But that is not what's coming down the pike. And again, the Republican strategy absolutely seems to be, here's a little bit of money to get you through this month. Now just go back to business as usual and ignore the fact that there is a pandemic and do nothing to mitigate it or address it or deal with it. Simply ignore the problem. So, yeah, that's the stimulus. But we do need that direct aid because a report just came out that in the Bronx, unemployment has now hit Great Depression era levels. They're at 24.7% unemployment in the Bronx. It's like 25%. 1 in every 4 people doesn't have a job. So we are definitely in dire straits. There is a huge looming economic catastrophe, which the United States and its leaders are simply putting off and ultimately ignoring. There is no plan for actually making the economy resilient or safe to reopen. Again, it's just simple denial. And there is no effort being made to provide stability or the capacity for businesses to plan through economic stimulus and through economic, I guess, planning, right? People just have no idea what's going to happen. So you can't invest in the future. You can't make intelligent or informed business decisions unless you have some idea of what the future economic climate is going to be. Only the Fed has done this. I can see that you can actually see that economic theory works, and that if you stabilize markets through government intervention, you promote growth, because the stock market, which is basically controlled by the Fed or regulated by the Fed, is booming. The economy at large, which generally relies on federal regulation and fiscal policy, is completely ground to a halt. So we're in a real problem, and we're in a real crisis, rather. And the next crisis is literally around the corner, and it's going to be bigger, because of 25% unemployment in the Bronx. It speaks to a gigantic collapse that is just cresting over the horizon as we try to ignore the current crisis. Where we're going to get the money to suffer through that is beyond me, because we are effectively taking all of the resources we have, throwing it into people's hands, you spending none of it to mitigate the pandemic as it is, the actual virus, and implementing ways to slow its spread and eradicate it from our country. And all we do are these stopgap measures. And if we just do stopgap measures, again, you can't plan for the future, which brings down business investment and business activity. It brings down people's capacity to engage in the economy because they can't plan for the future or make informed decisions. It creates a lot of economic and psychological distress, which lowers productivity, because people don't know whether they'll be able to stay in their homes, whether they'll be able to make ends meet. There is just this radical uncertainty in the economy, which is completely counterproductive. Stopgap measures only beget more stopgap measures because you don't solve the problem. And so finally, the United States runs out of money as an unemployment crisis hits. And again, there'll be no real way to moderate the unemployment crisis because there's no way to reopen the economy because we've done nothing about the actual spread of the disease. I mean, this is just, I just can't believe that this is how our government is treating this. And this stimulus package that's supposed to pass next week, like, it's good that we're getting that people will receive help, but holistically speaking, it's a disaster. And everything the government has done is just an unmitigated disaster. All right, we just comments, questions. Yes, people need help. What is the income threshold for the second stimulus? Who knows? The details, it's not passed yet, and the details are sparse. We do have a commitment from Mitch McConnell to pass something, but we have no idea. I got some questions about that last night. People were chatting me, messaging me, and I'm sorry to say that I don't know any more than what's been put on the news. What do you think of the Republicans' plan for $100 per a week? Is that a thing? I haven't even heard that. So if you could link to an article, that would be awesome. Could you give us an update about Cuomo's plan to prevent evictions? There is not a real plan. I mean, evictions have been paused, but rent is still due. So there is a program funded with about, I guess, $100 million worth of CARES Act money to provide rental assistance to people who are at 80% below, who make 80% or lower of your mean area of your AME, your area mean AMI, area mean income. So if you're 80% below the average income of people in your neighborhood, you're eligible. And if you can demonstrate that you have financial hardship because of the coronavirus, you can be eligible for rent relief. Now, there's only a $100 million pot of this, and there are, 25% of New Yorkers who couldn't afford rent, and there are hundreds of thousands. That's like thousands of people. So we did the math when the bill first passed. It's like 1 or 2 months rent for like 20% of New York City renters. So it'll get you, but that's if they pay the entirety of the rent. If they pay a portion of the rent, right, the money goes farther. So if you want to apply for that program, I guess I can find the link and pop it in the comments so you can Google it. But that's the situation with rent relief. It's not a huge pot. It will be exhausted rapidly. Not everybody's going to get help. And then evictions are just frozen until, I guess, the end of August at this point. But again, rent's still due. So as soon as evictions are unfrozen, people can start being kicked out. Whether there'll be another extension is anybody's guess. It doesn't look like rent relief is going to be part of the CARES Act. But with a $1,200 direct stimulus check, whether people want to spend that on paying their landlord is sort of up to them, I suppose. Seems like a ridiculous thing, but that is the nature of the world at this time. In any event, we covered everything I wanted to cover, and there's no more questions. So I'm going to go do yoga. It is Friday, and people generally don't watch on Friday, so we don't have the greatest audience. So I'm thinking I'm going to go enjoy Friday, and everybody should do the same. I'll see you on Monday. Oh, Deidre, how's it going? I'll see you on Monday at 9. We're not doing this over the weekend. And I might be in a different location. My father is out of town, and my brother and I might go to visit him over the weekend because we haven't seen him for a while. And it's nice to see your family every so often. And I think we've done a pretty good job staying safe. But that being said, I might be in a different location on Monday, but I'll still have internet. So I'll see everybody then at 9 p.m. You're welcome, Simon. Thank you for tuning in.